Now, as the word said, as the chapter said, petty cash, petty cash. Now, if anyone asks me what is the meaning of petty cash or what is exactly petty cash is, I would say the small expenses. So the petty cash, basically, the meaning of the petty cash is small expenses. For example, when you work for a big company, let's say you work for a company and the company have their own accountant, and obviously like from the accounts office, you cannot just go every time and try to get very small amount of money for small expenses. For example, for the kitchen, you need some tea, you need some milk, you need some sugar, then maybe you need to pay £5 for the taxi, maybe you need to pay £5 for the stationery. So all these small expenses, you just cannot go every time to the accounts office and ask for, can I have £5? Can I have £10? Can I have £2? So this doesn't look nice because this small expenses is for the company, but this amount is really, really small. So you don't want to go every time for this amount to the accounts office. So for that reason, company maintain a separate record. Company maintain a separate record, and this record we called petty cash. So company maintain a separate record. We called it petty cash. Now let's try to understand a bit more. What is petty cash? So if I try to explain it very simple way, I would say petty cash is a box. Petty cash is a box. Let's say this is a box. So this is a box, and this box we called petty cash box. So this box we called petty cash box. Petty cash box. And in this box, we keep some money. For example, let's say we keep £500 in this box. And where the money coming from? Money coming from the business bank. Let's say from the business bank, we withdraw from the bank, we withdraw £500 and just keep it on the petty cash box. So what I did, I went to the bank and I withdraw £500 from the bank and bring the cash and just put it on the petty cash box. Now what happened because of that? Because of that, my total asset balance is not changing at all. Try to understand, because I'm taking the money, I'm withdrawing the money from the bank and keeping on the petty cash box. So my bank balance going little bit down, 500. On the other hand, my cash balance going up by 500. So actually, because of the petty cash, there is no reduce or there is no increase or decrease of the cash balance or the net asset or the cash and cash equivalent. So this is just like taking the money from the bank and keep it on the box. Now the next question is why I have to keep £500 on the petty cash box. What is the reason? The reason is from here, this is a cash money. From here, I'm gonna spend all these small expenses for the business. So from this box, I'm gonna keep using for all these small expenses. For example, stationery. Then for example, tea. For example, taxi. So all these small expenses, for example, postage. So all these small expenses, I'm going to keep using from this box. Now the question is, just give me a second. One student waiting to join. Just let me send. Okay. All right. So as I said before, you need to make sure you check your link at least a day before. If you didn't receive the link from me, make sure you email on that time, because during the class time, if I get the email like I didn't receive the link or it and that, it's wasting the time for all of us. So make sure at least check a bit earlier so that I can send you the link. During the lesson time, checking, sending the link is a bit wasting of time. Okay, so from this box, we start spending all the small expenses, like for stationery, for tea, for coffee, for pastry, for postage, for everything. So we paid for every single small expenses incurred by the business. Now, obviously, like let's say this is for the month of January. So this is for the month of January. This is for the month of January. So let's say in the month of January, we have spent it for all the small expenses, £400. Let's we have spent it £400 for the month of January. So from this £500, I have left over £100. I have left over £100. So this £100 actually will be moved to the next month as opening balance. So for the month of January, the balance CD or the closing balance will be 100. And for the month of February, for the next month petty cash box, this £100 will be opening balance. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'll go to the bank and I'm going to withdraw another £400 to make it £500 again. So withdraw from the bank 400 and make £500 at the beginning of the month. So my plan is every month at the beginning of the month, I'm going to keep £500 and I'm going to keep spending from there. If the money is running out, I'll go to the bank, I'll withdraw the cash again and keep it on the box. But if any money left over, we will take this money for the next month and we call it balance CD. Any closing balance we have, we move it for the next period. Now, any money I planned for the petty cash box. For example, if I have planned, I'm going to keep £500 every month at the beginning. So this is called impressed amount. We called it impressed amount. Impressed amount. So impressed amount is the money that you're planning to keep at the beginning of the month every year for the petty cash purpose. So impressed amount is the amount that you want to keep or you're planning to keep every month at the beginning of the month on your petty cash box. And from there, you keep using until it completely run out. Or if you have any money left over after using that, you move it to the next period. So this is all about the petty cash. So if someone asks you now, what is petty cash? We know that petty cash is a small expenses. Why we need the petty cash? Because we cannot go every time to the accounts office. We ask for £5, £10. So for the small expenses, we keep some money somewhere in the box. From that box, we keep using. Okay, where the money coming from? Money coming from the bank. Because of the petty cash, the business asset goes up or down. The answer is no. Because of the petty cash, is nothing changes. So the money comes from the bank and keep it on the petty cash box. So actually, the cash is still same. The petty cash money always come from the small expenses, and after the year end, we calculate how much petty cash we have spent it, and obviously this one we move to the general ledger as well, and after that we do this one on our trial balance as asset as well. If there any money left over for the petty cash, we treat this one as asset. Doesn't matter money on the bank or on the petty cash box. If this is asset, this is asset. Okay, let's do some exercise. Let's do some practice. Let's go inside to find it out what else we have. So now we have some idea about the petty cash, what is petty cash and why business need the petty cash. Now we're actually going to do how we're going to record that. The reason is, for example, if I want to become a bookkeeper, if I join in a company and if my manager said, do you know how to record the petty cash? So I have to say, yes, I know how to record the petty cash. And obviously that time I need to know how to maintain the petty cash record. And after that, once the recording is done, then my manager can ask you, do you know how to post it petty cash to the ledger account? I have to say yes. So you'll see all of this. Let's move on and have a look. Let's move on and have a look at the petty cash. There is a lot of explanation here. So you can read yourself all of this. That will help you to understand. But we are going to move actually the actual point where we can see how to maintain the petty cash. Okay, so let's have a look at this example. Illustration number 4. Illustration number 4, writing up the petty cash book. Writing up the petty cash book. Let's read this question. One of your duties at Southfield Electrical is to write up the petty cash book each week. So it depends. If the company is really big and the small amount of expenses is really big, you can update every week. Or if the expenses are really low, then you can do every month. It depends how many transactions you have petty cash for the whole week, for the whole month. At the start of the week, that means at the beginning of the week, 4th of October, the petty cash box was empty. So at the beginning of the week, there was no money on the petty cash box. So petty cash box was completely empty. And the impress amount, £100. Impress amount, as I said before, impress amount is the amount that you're planning to keep on the petty cash box. So if you plan, I want to keep £100 at the beginning of the month, every month. I want to keep £100 at the beginning of the week. I want to keep £500. Depends how much expense you expect for the whole month or for the whole week. So any amount you want to keep on the petty cash box, we called it impressed amount. So they said the impressed amount of £100 was withdrawn from the bank in cash and placed in the petty cash box. So what happened? You went to the bank, you withdraw £100 from the bank and you keep it on the petty cash box. Because of that, your bank will be credit, because bank will go down and petty cash will be debit. So on the debit side of the petty cash, if they're asking what will be the journal will be petty cash will be debit because petty cash is an asset. On the other hand, because of I withdrew £100 from the bank, bank will be reduced by £100, my asset will go down, so bank will be credit. There is no journal for the time being here, just to remember, because you're going to see this on the next question. Let's read the question. The petty cash vouchers for the week show the following details. Now, this word, even though there is no question in the exam, from this word is called vouchers. But this one you're going to see a lot when you work as a bookkeeper, or if you're already working as a bookkeeper. This is very, very common word for you, or common thing for you that you see every day. Vouchers. Vouchers and the invoice. These two we cannot avoid. Every day we have to listen this thing 100 times. Voucher and the invoice. Now invoice, you already know what is invoice and how does it work. Now obviously for the voucher, we never done voucher before, so I want to show you how the voucher look like. But just to remember, voucher will be never in the exam, so they're not going to ask you how the voucher look like, prepare a voucher. No, just for your understanding purpose, I'll tell you what is vouchers. Vouchers is a paper Voucher is a piece of paper that you make. Voucher don't come from outside. Voucher you make from your computer, or maybe you can print it out something from outside. So voucher is written voucher. Voucher is written here voucher. The reason we need the voucher so that we can identify the reason why I paid for. For example, you are the bookkeeper and one of the employee came to you and said, can I have £20 because I paid £20 for the taxi. And you said, okay, can I have the receipt? And he gave you the receipt, £20. Or maybe he gave you the parking ticket. Maybe he gave you the receipt for the postage and he said, can I have my money back? So you received the receipt from that person. You got the receipt and you give £20. Now after that, after 6 months or after 1 year, you see there's a lot of receipt because every day someone give it to you receipt and take the money from you. Now after 6 months, someone asks you, the manager asks you, you paid £200 for the taxi. To whom you paid? Now you said I paid a lot of person because a lot of employee come to me and give me the receipt and I paid. I don't know to whom I paid because you cannot remember everyone's name for 1 year or 6 months. You'll forget to whom you paid for the postage, for whom you paid for the taxi or for the stationery. For that reason, you should have a record. So that's why we prepare the voucher. On the voucher, there is a date. So which date you make the payment. There is a person to whom you paid, the description, what did you pay and why you paid. It could be like taxi or stationery, whatever it is. After that, received by, who received it, his name and signature, and authorized by, who authorized you, maybe that you. So that this voucher, what you do, you have a receipt on your hand for £20 for the taxi and you make the voucher. So the person signed the voucher and you attach this receipt, with that voucher. So what happened, then you file it. In future, if any question raised, okay, well, to whom you paid, from the voucher you know to whom you paid. Why did you pay for taxi? How much you paid? This is the amount. And which date you paid? This is the date. Who authorized it? I authorized it. So that's all the description you can see from the voucher. And what is the evidence? The evidence is the receipt that will be attached back of the voucher. So this is the way you make the voucher attached on the file. So any question come future, if heavy HMRC come, they can check every single thing. The evidence will be there, receipt will be there, you will be safe. Otherwise, the manager can tell you, how do I believe like this is not the taxi that you used? Maybe you are the bookkeeper, you come by taxi from home every day to work, and you take £20 from the company and just keep the receipt and you claim the money from the company. So for prove it, you have to have a voucher. There will be no question in the exam. That's just for your understanding. Okay, so let's talk about the rest of the question. So you can see every transaction recorded in a voucher. Every transaction recorded in the form of voucher. We can see here the first one, this is stationery costing. Stationery costing £5.64. So we paid for the stationery and the costing is £5.64, including VAT. Including VAT. When the VAT is included, we know how to find it out the VAT, isn't it? If the VAT is inside, we have to take out the VAT because this VAT we're going to claim back from HMRC. This VAT we're going to claim back from HMRC. How did we take out the VAT? Whatever is the gross VAT, if the question said VAT is included, we always divide by 6. If the question said the VAT is inside, we always divide by 6 to get the VAT. So the total VAT and the net. Net means there is no VAT. So gross minus VAT is the net. The next question we have here. Train fare £15.80, no VAT. If the question said no VAT, don't worry about the VAT. If the question clearly said to you, no VAT, don't worry about the VAT. Then you have a postage cost, no VAT. Coffee, no VAT. Copying paper, including VAT, again divide by 6. Postage, no VAT. Envelope, including VAT, divide by 6. Train fare, no VAT. So this is all the voucher I have. This is all the expense we have during the week. Now I have to record it on the petty cash book. So it could be in the Excel, could be in the software, doesn't matter. So we're going to see how we record actually manually on the Excel or in a paper anywhere. So let's have a look at that example. In petty cash, we have a two side. In petty cash, you have a two side. The left hand side is the debit side and right hand side is the credit side. So left hand side is the debit side and the right hand side is the credit side. So debit side is all about how much money you have. Debit side is all about how much money we have. So debit side is all about how much money we have. So whatever money you have at the beginning, we call this petty cash, is opening balance. And from there, from the debit side, we keep spending the money. For example, here we have £100. So this £100 we withdraw from the bank and keep it on the petty cash box. And from that box, we keep using for stationery, for train, for postage, for coffee, for everything. And we need to see how much money we have left over. How much money we have left over after deducting all of this. Now you can see on the credit side there is something called analysis column. Analysis column will help you to categorize the cost. Analysis column will help you to categorize the cost. That means which cost will be categorized on which sector we can get it from the analysis column. For example, if I say stationery, so stationery will go to the stationery column, train fare will go to the travel, postage will go to the post, coffee will go to the office expense, then copy will go to the stationery, postage go to postage, envelope go to stationery, train fare go to travels. The reason we will categorize it so that at the year end, we can identify how much was actually paid for the travel, because we can see from the total here, we can find it out how much for the travel, how much for the post, how much for the stationery, and how much for the office supplies. So category is very, very important. This is just an example. You can add more line based on the expense you have on your business. If your business have different type of expenses, you can add always the more line. So this is how the petty cash record look like. So we have a debit side. On the debit side, we record all of our money in, and credit side, all of money out from the business. Okay, this is the example you have seen. Now we're going to practice an activity to actually see can you do it or not. Why do we divide by 6? You need to go back to chapter number 3. It's called VAT and discount. I hope, I think you join later on with us. So if you read this chapter, you understand about the VAT and discount. So you move to chapter number 3, read everything from there. You will understand why we divide by 6. So we have two types of VAT. So we have input and output VAT. So when the VAT is outside, let's say if I said £100, and if I said there is no VAT inside, we times by 20%. If the VAT is excluded, VAT rate is 20%, so we got £20 is the VAT. But if the question said £100 and the VAT is already inside, then I have to divide by 6 to take out the VAT. Now you can do this one, the VAT rate. So we can say VAT rate divide 100 plus the VAT rate times gross amount. It will give you the same amount because you want to take out the VAT. But if you want to make your time, if you want to save your time, or if you want to make this calculation simple, all you need to do is divide by 6. We've done a lot of questions like this. So hopefully, like if you go back, chapter number 3 will be more clear. But if you still have any question, you can email me. I'll discuss more about it. Okay, so let's move on. Here we can see there is another explanation for that. For the petty cash book, we can see here the debit side and the credit side. Now this one, they tell us how much is the balance CD. Now let's have a look at this one. We have received £100 from the bank. So on the petty cash box, we have £100. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see that. So we have £100 from the bank. So our petty cash balance, our petty cash box says £100. From the £100, we keep spending all the money. So we spent all this money from the bank, and total we have spent £71.81, 71.81. And from the £100, we have £28.19 left. So from the £100, if I spend it, from the £100, if we spend it 71.81, so obviously we have leftover 28.19, and this one we called it balance CD. This one we called balance CD, and this balance CD will become opposite side as a balance BD. Ledger account, you already know how to do the balance CD and BD. We have done so many times. This one shouldn't be problem, the balance CD and BD. So now the question, if the question asks you how much money, so for example, this is the month of October. So how much money we have to withdraw from the bank for the month of November? So from the October, I have left £28. So for the November, on the petty cash box, I already have 28.19. And if the question asks you how much will be the impress amount, then you have to withdraw the same amount that you have spent it. So that is 71.81. It's a very simple question, but I have seen a student in the exam, they got so confused this question. I really don't understand why they get so confused on this question, because if my plan is always to keep £100 on the petty cash box, and if something is left over from the last month, and if I need to make £100, how much I need to withdraw from the bank? So whatever I have spent, that if I withdraw the same amount, is going to go back to the same amount, isn't it? It's very simple. But in the exam, I have seen a student waiting and looking at this question 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and they become so stressed. There is no stress. The impress amount is the amount that you have, that you want to keep on the petty cash box. And how much you need to withdraw depends how much you have. If you don't have anything, then withdraw the whole £100. If you have anything, minus that, get the figure. So actually, whatever you have spent it, if you withdraw the same amount, you can always go back there. So don't be confused. If the question asks you how much money you have to withdraw from the bank in order to get back to the impress amount. So you need to identify how much you have spent it, withdraw the same amount, end of the story. All right, so let's move on. Let's do activity. Activity 5 is writing up petty cash book. And let's write up the petty cash book. How we write up the petty cash book? So writing up the petty cash book, we can read the question. Let's read the question. This is a summary of petty cash payment made by Toby Limited. Tiger Taxi paid £15, no VAT. Post Office 31, no VAT. Sarah Stationery paid £60 plus VAT. Plus VAT means the VAT is not inside. You have to add the VAT. Plus means add. So you need to add 20% VAT. If the question said plus VAT, you add 20%. If the question said including VAT or inclusive VAT, VAT is already inside, divided by 6. If the question said gross, that means VAT inside. If the question said net, there is no VAT. The word could be different. You need to know when the VAT is inside, when it is not. Okay, so let's move on. There is a petty cash here. We need to complete this petty cash book. Before that, let's write it down, all of this in the corner. So you're going to write it down. Tiger Taxi, £15, no VAT. Post office, £31, no VAT. Stationery, £60 plus VAT. All right, so let's move on. Let's complete the book. So at the opening of the month, we can see we have £200. So on the petty cash box, we have £200. So from £200, we have to use all these expenses. The first one we're going to say that is Tiger Taxi. Tiger Taxi. The amount is £15 and there is no VAT, and it will go to where? Postage, travel, or stationery. So I have a Tiger Taxi. Is very important to understand the analysis column. So you have to see the expense and you need to know where it is going. So it will going to the travel. Very well done, Evelyn. Very well done, Sadia. So we said it will go to travel. Then the next one we have postage. Obviously, I think all of you know it. It will go to the post, will go to the postage. So £31. £31. Then I have a stationery. 60. Now there's a plus VAT. How much will be the amount? 60 plus VAT. So 60 times 20%, that is 12. So 60 plus 12, my total will be 72, isn't it? So my total amount I paid for the stationery is 72, VAT is 12, and stationery is 60. Because actually my cost is 60. I'm going to get back the rest of the amount, isn't it? Okay, so after that, we can identify the balance CD. Balance CD. How much is the balance CD? Can anyone tell me? How much is the balance CD? So we have £200. From the £200, we minus 15, 31, and 72. This is all the money you have spent. How much money left over? The closing balance. So we have left over £82. Very well done. So that's how we can do our petty cash book. All right, any question from here before we move to the next activity? Any question from here? Petty cash will be definitely the exam, so make sure you get the full marks from there. So don't need to be confused for that. It's really simple and easy. If you have any question, you can ask. We move to the next question. Let's move on then. Okay, so now we talk about posting the petty cash book to the general ledger. Posting the petty cash book to the general ledger. So now we're going to see how to post it. This is exactly like the way we did for the cash book, the last chapter. In petty cash, we have two things again. One is book of prime entry, because petty cash book could be book of prime entry or could be part of general ledger. So we need to understand this one. If the question said this is a book of prime entry, we take the petty cash figure as well. If the question said this is a part of general ledger, we don't take it because it's already taken. Now, obviously, the book of prime entry, all of we know, book of prime entry means it's never recorded anywhere before. So first time we recorded somewhere, this is called book of prime entry. We never recorded to anywhere. First time we recorded somewhere, we called it book of prime entry. On the other hand, the general ledger means, part of general ledger means is already done. So book of prime entry is done. We are in step number 2. So that case, we have to ignore the step number 1. Let's have a look. This example. In this example, you can see here, they said posting to the general ledger. Posting to the general ledger. The first one, they said book of prime entry only. Book of prime entry only. That means I never record anywhere else. Just I record on the book of prime entry. So it's only book of prime entry, not part of the general ledger. So you can see here, debit side, and the credit side. So on the debit side, from the bank we withdraw £100, and from the £100 we have spent it 40 for the train and 60 for the stationery, travel and office expense. That's my petty cash book. Now from this book, I will transfer all this information to the ledger account. How we do that? We can see here, petty cash book, debit, because money just come from the bank to the box. So actually the asset is not changed. I already discussed that before. Actually the money is still with me. I just took the money from the bank and just keep it on the petty cash box. So what happened? Actually money taken from the bank and keep it on my drawer. So my asset is still there. So petty cash box is still my asset. So this £100 still is my asset. And of course, because of that, my bank balance, because I took the money from the bank, so bank balance is going down. So that will be the credit. So this is the debit side for the petty cash books. On the other hand, we have a credit side, we have a VAT, we have a travel, and we have office expense. Now all this money, 10, 40, and 50, all this money we have paid. This is my expense. Credit side is all about expenses because I paid, and expenses are always debit. So this all will be debit. Let's have a look at this one. So when I posting the petty cash book credit side, so we can see here the petty cash here is a credit side. So it's a credit, petty cash is a credit. Why? Because of that, because of this payment, this 3 payment, my box become empty, isn't it? I paid for stationery, I paid for travel, I paid for that, and my box become empty. So my petty cash goes empty because cash book credit side is all about payment, how much payment I have make. So how much payment I have make, that's the cash book credit side. So cash book credit side, that means my all payment is gone, money is gone, and obviously my payment going means my cash book, my petty cash box getting empty. So that's why it's a credit. On the other hand, VAT, travel expense, and the office expense, that's my expenses, that's my debit. The list you can send, yes, you can see this one from there as well, Tamir. Yes, the sheet I have sent to all of you with posting, you can see everything from there as well. Yes, but you need to understand the logic. If you understand that, then you can revise from there very quickly. All right, so let's move to the next one. This one, okay, we have activity here, activity 6. Let's talk about this activity. Posting the petty cash book. Posting the petty cash book of prime entry. Book of prime entry. They said posting to general ledger. Let's do this one. That's the easy one. We just practice now. So let's do this one. How much money have you spent it for the petty cash? 199 total. So this is the petty cash money have you spent it for all of this. And we paid for VAT, paid for office expense, paid for postage, and paid for travel. And this all my expenses. So all my expenses is debit. And because of this all expenses, my petty cash box become empty. So my credit side of the petty cash box, so my box become empty. That means petty cash is credit because box is going down, asset is going down. So I'm going to say petty cash amount 199 I paid from the box, that's my credit. And how I spend all of this? First, for the VAT, I can see £18 for the VAT, that's my debit. Expenses, office expenses, that is £90, that's also debit. Postage, £90, sorry, postage £16, that is also debit. And travel, we have 75, that is also debit. So this is a book of prime entry. Remember, if this is a part of general ledger, that means this step number 1 is already done and we do not take the petty cash. So when there is a part of general ledger, we ignore the opening balance of the petty cash because we already done in book of prime entry. It is already included on the part of general ledger. Only we consider any money we have withdrawn from the bank during the period. For example, my opening balance from the last period. Opening balance, whatever is the closing for this period is the opening for next period. So if my opening balance, let's say opening balance 1st of January, £100 for the petty cash. And during the week or during the month, I also need some money because the box was getting empty. I withdraw from the bank another £50. So when I do the movement to the ledger account for the part of GL, I'm not going to take this 100 because this 100 comes from the previous period that is already included. I only consider the bank whatever we withdraw during this period. Let's do one example. Any question from here before we move to the next activity? If you have any question, please write it down. We can discuss more for that. No? So let's move on then. Okay, this time it says a part of petty cash book as book of prime entry and part of the double entry system. So this time this is a part of GL as well, part of general ledger as well. So let's have a look. Let's do this question. Okay. So we can see here the credit side is simple, is all same. Credit side is a VAT, motor expense, office expense, and travel. This is all expenses. There is no problem for that. So you're going to say VAT, that is 5.40, that is our debit. Motor expense, £12, this is also debit. Office expense, 23.90, this is also debit. And travel, £3, also debit. So that's all debit. There is no problem for that. Credit side is always debit, is all expenses. Now on the debit side, we can see we have opening balance. So balance BF, opening balance 92, and during the year I withdraw £58. Now my question is, am I going to take both on the general ledger, or I'm going to ignore the first one? What is that? What I'm going to do? This is a part of GL, part of general ledger. So they're saying this is a part of general ledger. I have two things. So I have opening balance. I can see £92. That's come from the last period. And during the time, I withdraw £58 from the bank. During the time, I withdraw £58 from the bank. So this one, you have to be careful. So when you do this question, make sure you know it. Otherwise, if you just think, like if you don't read the question properly, if you can end up with a mistake. So you only take, well done Banu and well done Nazia, we only take the 58. We only take the 58, it's a bank 58 credit. We don't take this one because this one comes from the last period, and this question is a part of general ledger, so that is already included. So book of prime entry is already done before that. That means this is already included. So if the question said, remember, if the question said it is a book of prime entry, then you take everything. If the question said it is a part of general ledger, don't take the opening balance. But if the question said nothing, if the question said nothing, not book of prime entry, not part of general ledger, consider this one is a part of general ledger. Consider this one as a part of GL. If the question don't say anything, consider this one as a part of GL. All right, so this is the petty cash. It's not very something you have to be worried about. A simple thing, just need some practice, you'll be all right. If this is a book of prime entry, then yes, you will say not bank credit. So the opening balance for the petty cash, you write petty cash 92, that is credit, and bank 58 credit. So you make a separation. So petty cash will be 92 credit and your bank will be 58 credit. The reason is this money coming from the box, £92 coming from the box from the last month. This one you withdraw from the bank. So that will make you understand 92 come from the previous period. 58, this time I withdraw from the bank. All right, so let's move on. This is the end of the chapter. We move to the next chapter. We have only one more chapter left, so we think we'll finish really quick today. Let's move on. Trial balance. Let's talk about trial balance. What is trial balance? If I ask everyone just in one line to tell me what is trial balance, who will say what? Can you write it down? What is trial balance? If someone asks you like, what is trial balance? What are you going to say? What do you think? What is trial balance? So trial balance, debit and credit, yes. What else are you going to say if someone asks you, what is trial balance? Accuracy of the ledger account, yes. The balance of debit and credit, okay. Debit and credit, Evelyn, okay. A list of the balance in the ledger account, Luis, very well done. This one I accepted more, like list of the balance in the general ledger. Statement of debit and credit, double NT, with any disagreement indicating error. Well, column, you are one step ahead. So we are not looking for any error now. We are in bookkeeping transaction. In the transaction paper, we always expect our trial balance will be matched. On the transaction paper, we expect our trial balance will be matched. It will be always debit and credit always will be equal. Now, what happens if it is not matched? We're going to see on the next paper. That will be bookkeeping controls. So this paper, transaction, you will see all of your trial balance will be matched. So debit side and the credit side will be matched. But the next paper we're going to do, that time the trial balance will be not matched. So there'll be some mistake we have done, and we need to know how to identify the mistake. But still is a very good answer column. All balance from the ledger account, very well done, Sepi. Yes, this is all balance from the ledger account. Okay, so it's a very good. All of you have some idea. So let's talk about that. Trial balance. Trial balance is the balances of the ledger account. Trial balance is the closing balance of the ledger account. It's a very nice and appropriate answer. Trial balance is the balances of ledger account. If we talk about where we started from the beginning, if you remember chapter number 1 and 2, we have started. So we started from the transaction. So first thing we have done from the transaction, if I said where the accounting start from, we said accounting start from the recording of journals. So journals is the first thing we have done on the accounting process. Before journal, there is nothing. Before journal, there is nothing. Before journal, there is only transaction. Transaction. What is transaction? Transaction means buying and selling. So as a business, you buy something, you sell something. This is called transaction. After transaction, the accounting process starts from journals. Accounting process start from journals. What does that mean, journals? Journals means something is debit and something is credit. So accounting process start from journal. Accounting process start from journals, debit and credit. And we know our debit and credit has to be equal. Debit and credit. If the debit is 100, the credit needs to be 100. So debit and credit has to be equal. So after the journal, once we prepare the journal, we prepare the ledger account. This is step number 2. Once all the journal is done, we prepare the ledger account. Ledger account sometimes it look like T. We call it T account, isn't it? The ledger account sometimes it look like T. We call it T account. On the ledger account, we have a debit side and we have a credit side. And on the ledger account, we find balance CD and BD. On the ledger account, we find the opening balance and the closing balance. Now, to prepare the ledger account, we need the journal. Without journal, we cannot prepare the ledger account. So after the ledger account, our step number 3 is to prepare the trial balance. We prepare the trial balance, TB, trial balance. The trial balance have a debit side and the credit side. So debit side and the credit side. So we expect the trial balance has to be matched. So the trial balance debit side and the credit side has to be equal. Trial balance debit side and the credit side has to be equal. And after the trial balance, we make our financial statement. That one is submitted to HMRC. So from the trial balance, we prepare the financial statement, that is profit and loss account and the balance sheet. This one actually we presented or is submitted to HMRC. Now you can see we already done up to ledger account. We're going to see now the trial balance. Trial balance is very easy. So once we've done the trial balance, we have one more step left to submit the accounts to HMRC. And obviously you're not going to see how to prepare the accounts in level 2. You're going to see it in level 3. We have a paper called Final Account Preparation. We called it FAP, F-A-P, Final Account Preparation. There we're going to see how to prepare the final accounts. So here we're going to see up to the trial balance. We know the debit credit journal step number 1 is done. Ledger account step number 2, we have done it. We know how to do the balance CDBD. Now we're going to see how to prepare the trial balance. Now there is a trick I want to tell you. If you remember that, your life will be very, very easy. Try to remember this trick. So we already know if the balance CD is this side, balance BD will be this side. This one you already know. So balance CD, if on the credit side, balance BD will be the debit side. Whatever is the closing side, the opening side will be the opposite. So for example, if my balance CD 100 here and the balance BD is 100 here. So if my balance CD is on the credit side and the balance BD on the debit side, remember it represents the debit balance. If I tell you, is it a debit balance or it is a credit balance? It will represent a debit balance because balance BD on the debit side. If the balance BD on the credit side, it will represent is a credit balance. If I ask you, let's say this account belongs to bank. So bank 100, balance CD on the credit side and balance BD on the debit side. If I ask you what balance it is, bank. So we can see here balance BD on the debit side. I said bank is a debit balance. So if the balance BD on the debit side, we say is a debit balance. If the balance BD on the credit side, we say is a credit balance. We will follow the balance BD. Remember that. Don't follow the balance CD. We always follow the balance BD. So if the balance BD on the debit side is a debit balance, if the balance BD on the credit side is a credit balance, trick number 1. Trick number 2 is if the balance BD on the debit side, on the trial balance, it will come to the debit side. So on the trial balance, it straightway come to the debit side. If the balance BD on the credit side, then it will come to the credit side. So if you see on the T account, if you see from the T account, if your balance BD on the debit side, so straight away, even if you don't know, it will go to the debit side of the trial balance, or credit side, you can take to the debit side because it's balance BD on the debit side. So on the T account, if the balance BD on the debit side, you take to the debit side, straight away to the trial balance. If the balance BD on the credit side, you take to the credit side. Very simple, very straightforward. So let's do some exercise, let's do some practice, we'll understand more. So you already discussed all of this. I hope you have some idea. Now you can start doing the practice. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on. Yes, Evelyn, Louis, yes, they are the credit balance. Yes, so let's have a look how we can do that. Let's go to one of the example. We do straight away the activity because it's not very difficult thing. Okay, let's have a look at that. We have an initial trial balance. We can see the question. We have a lot of ledger account. We have a ledger account for bank, ledger account for capital, ledger account for purchase, for rent, for sales, for cash, for rates, for sales ledger control, purchase ledger control, wages. And after that, we have a trial balance. So all you need to say, we need to write what is debit and what is credit. We need to write the amount. And after that, we expect the total will be equal, debit side and the credit side. Okay, so let's start this question. First thing first, you can do by yourself, obviously, but if you're stuck in any question, you can follow that trick. Now let's talk about this one, bank. The first one we have bank. Bank. Now, how much is the bank we're going to take to the trial balance? Some students I have seen, they took the total balance. Never took the total balance. Never ever. If you take the total balance, you will get 0. Remember that. Never take the total balance. You only take balance CD or balance BD. If the question don't give you balance BD, you always take the balance CD, because balance BD and CD is the same figure. So we're going to take 19,390. Now my next question is, it will be on the debit side or credit? So it is a debit or credit? That's an asset. We can see it's not an overdraft. It's not a liability. So we can see is a debit. But if you are confused, you can follow that trick number 2. Trick number 2 is balance BD on the debit side. You can see this one, balance BD on the debit side. That means this will go to the debit side of the trial balance. This is trick. If you are confused about anything, just follow the balance BD which side. If balance BD on the debit side, take to the debit side of the trial balance. Balance BD on the credit side will go to the credit side of the trial balance. All right, so let's move on. 19, we'll say this is our debit. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. We have capital. Capital, 20,000, debit or credit? Capital is a liability, obviously it's a credit, but if you're still confused, you can see which side is the balance BD. So it's a credit. Very well done. Then we move to the purchase. Purchase, we have 700. That's our debit, that's our expenses. Then we have rent. Rent, we have 225. That's our expenses, that's our debit. Then we have sales. We have sales, that is 1407. That's our income, that's our credit. Then we have cash. Cash is an asset. 582. That's our debit. Rents, 135. That's our debit, is expenses. Sales ledger control, credit customer. Sales ledger control, credit customer. So we can see here, sales ledger control, 750. That's our debit. Then we have purchase ledger control. What you said, 582. Why 582? You tell me why not? Because we are taking the balance BD, isn't it? We are not taking the total. So if you take the total, you will get 0. As I said, remember that. If you take the total, you'll end up with 0. Don't take the total. Okay, so let's move on. Then we have purchase ledger control. Purchase ledger control. That is our liability account, credit customer, 450. That's our credit. And the last one we have wages. Wages. We have 75 is expense, is our debit. All right, so let's move on. We're already ready to do our trial balance now. Let's do this one. So the bank, come to the debit side. We're writing the amount to 19,390. Capital, credit, 20,000. Purchase, 700. Debit, Rent 225 debit. Sales 1407. Credit cash 582. Debit. Rent 135. Debit. Sales ledger control, customer account balance, assets, debit. Purchase ledger control 450. Liability credit, wages 75, debit. And after that, all we need to do, we need to add it all the debit side and the credit side and expect it has to be equal. If we done right, then it will be equal. If we done anything wrong, if we made a mistake, it's not going to be match. If it is not match, we made a mistake. So check the total and tell me, is it match or not? All right, so 21,857. So 21,857. Both sides need to be equal. 21,857. Very good. So if it is a match, we are happy. If it is a match, so we can tell we get the 100% marks from this question, because if it is a match, we know we done good. We done the correct answer. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So this one, we will do this one together, everyone. So I'm going to tell the entry name. You need to tell me, is it debit or credit? Okay, so let's do this one together. The first one you're going to see here, the motor vehicle. Is it debit or credit? Everyone try. Motor vehicle is our asset. Motor vehicle is a debit. If you don't understand this one, why it is debit, always ask me like why you think motor vehicle is debit. Doesn't matter if I said debit, it has to be debit. You need to know the reason. If you don't understand it, always let me know why it is debit. So motor vehicle is asset, and we know asset is always debit. And obviously, if you don't know how the asset is debit, you need to go to your chapter number 5 again, and you need to read the debit and credit, the dead and click. If you remember your dead and click, you will know your asset and liabilities. So if you're still confused about your debit or credit, my advice will be go back to page number, chapter number 5, and from there you read the chapter very well so that you are clear about debit and credit. So motor vehicle, we have debit because it's an asset. Okay. Then we have inventory. What is inventory? Is it a debit or credit? Inventory is also asset. Inventory is stock. Inventory is the product that we cannot sell. So anything left over from the production, we call it inventory. So inventory is also a debit. So 4,200. Bank. Bank, the money we have on the bank. Bank is also our asset. And obviously bank is our debit. 18,260. Then we have sales ledger control. That is the credit customer balance. Sales ledger control, that is the credit customer balance. So we said this is our debit, is our asset as well. Credit customer, the customer need to pay some money to me. Then we have purchase ledger control, credit supplier, that I have purchased on credit from people and I have to pay them money. So that's my liability. Purchase ledger control. So that's my liability, that's my credit, 6,400. Then we have a capital. Capital is always credit. Capital is always credit. Very well done, Banu. Yes, capital is always credit. 80,000. Capital and sales, always credit. Then you have a sales. Sales is income. Sales is income. So if there is income, income is always credit. So 130,000. Then we have a sales return. If the sales is credit, then sales return will be the opposite, isn't it? If the sales is a credit, sales return will be opposite. So sales return will be debit because customer returned to you, and because of that, your credit customer balance will go down. Purchase. Purchase is the expense. Purchase is expense. If I buy something for the business, that's the expense for me. So purchase is always debit for me. 84,000. Then have purchase return. So if the purchase is debit, purchase return will be opposite. Purchase return will be credit, 5,400. Then have bank charges is expense. Bank charges, bank make you some charges, so you have to pay it. So bank charges is a debit. Then you have a discount allowed. Discount allowed is expenses. You give some discount to your customer. That's expense for you, and any expense is debit. So 1,800. Then you have discount received. You receive some discount from your supplier. So discount received is income. 1,200 is a credit. Wages and salaries. Wages and salaries is expense, and of course this is a debit for you. $43,600. Rent and rates. So rent and rates is the expense for you. This is also debit. 12,400. Telephone. Telephone also expense for you. Telephone is a debit. 2,040. Then you have electricity. Electricity is also debit. Is expense. 5,100. And the office expense, the question already said is expenses, so we don't have to worry too much. We just says expenses, so 1,400 is a debit. That's all. So if you can identify, yes, any expense is debit. Any type of expenses, that is all debit. Okay, so if we can identify this one, now we can add up the debit side and the credit side. Can you add up and see, is it a match or not? If this is a match, we done correct. If it is not match, that means we done something wrong. Which side is the 22300, Sharon? Is it the debit side or credit side, or both you checked? So both. That's good. So both sides, if it is equal, that means our trial balance is matched. If our trial balance is matched, then we can get 100% marks from this question. So you don't have to worry about anything. So this one will give you 25 marks at least from the exam. Okay, so before we move to the next activity, any question from here? No, all good. All right, so let's move on then. Let's move on to the next question. Why the bank charges is debit? Because it's not the interest, it's bank charges, Sharon. Because it's a bank charges. There is two things. One is bank charges, one is bank interest. Interest could be received or could be paid. Now, bank charges, if you have a business bank account, so you need to pay some money to the bank because you are using the bank services. Let's say bank said your monthly charge will be £20. So if you need to £20, if you need to pay £20 to the bank as a charge, that's your expense, isn't it? So obviously any expense is a debit for us. On the other hand, if they say interest received, that will be income, that will be credit. If you need to pay the interest, that will be expense. So you need to identify is it income or expense. If this is expense, is always debit. All right. Okay, let's move on then. So we move on to the next, is the end of the chapter, but we try to do some more practice. Still we have a lot of time. So let's do some more practice. Let's do this question. This one, that's one very easy, but still do it. So we're going to just say debit or credit, so quick. Okay, let's start with the first one. Motor vehicle all you need to say is a debit or credit. We'll do it really quick. So motor vehicle, we already done it, is a debit. I'm gonna just tick it. Office equipment, debit or credit. Office equipment is our debit, is asset. Sales is income, so sales will be our credit. Very well done. Purchase is expenses. This is our debit. Then you have a cash. Cash is an asset, so cash will be debit. Bank overdraft. Bank overdraft is a liability. We have to pay it back to the bank, so this is our liability, that will be credit. And then we have a petty cash. Petty cash is an asset, so petty cash will be debit. Let's move on. The next one we have here, capital. Capital is a liability from the business, so it is a credit. Sales return. Sales return is a debit because it reduces the customer balance. Purchase return is a credit because I return to my supplier. Sales ledger control, that means credit customer. That's my credit customer. Credit customer is my asset. They're my debit. Purchase ledger control. Purchase ledger control is my liability. Credit supplier, that's my credit. Then I have VAT owing to HMRC. So I have a liability. I have to pay some VAT to HMRC. VAT owing to HMRC, that is our credit. Remember, in the exam, if they just say VAT owing from, if the two become from, then it will be asset. That time you're expecting some VAT back from HMRC. Remember that. VAT owing from is a debit, VAT owing to is a liability, the credit. Then we have a telephone is expense debit, electricity is expense debit, wages is expense debit. Then we have a loan from the bank. Loan from the bank is a liability, isn't it? Loan from the bank is a liability, so it's our credit. Discount allowed is expense, this is our debit. Discount received is income, is a credit. Rent expense is a debit. Very well done, Tamina. Very well done, everyone. So you done really well. So we done like some practice. I think we'll be very good on trial balance. We're expecting the full marks from this area. Let's have a look at something new we can see here. There is a question I want to discuss. This one, activity 5. In activity 5, we can see here, they said they give us 2 ledger account and we know how to do it. And after that, they didn't write anything because they give us cash and they give us VAT control account for the ledger account, and rest of this they give us normally. So cash, they make this one empty. There is no figure on the cash and there is no figure for the VAT. We have to identify from the ledger account. We already know it. It's not difficult. Let's do this one. So for the cash, which balance I'm going to take from this T account? Which balance I'm going to take? 520, and it is debit or credit? 520 I'm going to take, is it debit or credit? Very well done. I'm going to say cash 520 and I'll say is a debit. Very, very good. Then you move to the next one. The next one, I have a VAT control. VAT control. Which figure I'm going to take? VAT control. VAT 640. And the 640 I'm going to say is a debit or credit? Credit. Very well done. 640 I'm going to say credit. Very well done. Okay, so let's do this one. Cash is empty, so I'm going to write this one, cash 520. I'm going to tick on the debit side. Let's write it down, 520 debit. Then I'm going to write VAT, that is 640, and that's on the credit side, 640. The rest of this is normal. So this is a mixed question. They give us some ledger account and the trial balance so that we can do it. So the bank, let's do the bank. Bank is a debit. So 9320. Sales ledger control 10,000 is the debit, is the asset. Sales is income 21650. Sales return is a debit 230. Discount allowed is expense debit. Purchase ledger control 2,500. Purchase 6,300. Purchase return 480. Discount received 140 and capital 1,000. Can you check anyone like if the balances match or not? In this paper transaction, the trial balance will be definitely match in the exam. Remember that. So we are expecting for the next paper, when you do the next paper, bookkeeping control, on that time, it will not be match. Our trial balance will not be matched. Debit side will give you something, credit side will give you something. And after that, we have to identify the reason. We have to find the reason. We have to find the error, why it is not matching. Okay, Tamir, so it's 26,410. Which side it is, Tamir? Is it debit or credit? 26,410. Let me change it. 26,410. So let's make this total, this one, and find it is matched or not. So in the exam, make sure like this area, this trial balance area, we score 100% marks, so that we don't lose any marks from the trial balance area. And of course, like next week, I'm gonna bring an exam type question, and we're gonna solve it together. So I'm gonna bring one whole exam type question from the beginning till end. We will solve it together very slowly with the explanation. And of course, like we'll know what type of question will come in the exam and how many marks will be from which chapter we're going to see it on next class. So next class will be the revision class. And on the revision class, we try to solve every single problem we have from the question. And obviously, I have sent you, I think, the practice question as well, the question bank. If you received it, you can start practice from there. If anyone didn't receive the question bank, the practice book, you can always email me. I can send it to you. All right, so I hope it is matched. Is anyone check this one? The debit side and the credit side, is it equal or not? So let's set match, yeah. So 26,410. So if it is match, so that means we got it right. And in the exam, more or less, it will be same. So yeah, that's it. So obviously, like I won't be able to join at the beginning. So that's fine, Sharon. So you can always see the recorded video. If you missed the lesson for any reason, if you join late, you can always have the video for the next time. You can practice that one. And after the next week, after the revision, after next week, I'll tell you the week after we'll do the mock exam and we'll do the final. So I'm going to send you an email. I'll tell you you can attend for the mock exam in both center in Barking or Park Royal, or you can tell me which center is preferred, good for you, close for you. And after that, you're going to do the final. So next week is the revision. Week after, we'll do the mock exam. Then we'll do the final exam. So still, we have 3 weeks for the final exam. So even if you didn't start study yet, if you start study from today, still will be absolutely fine because we have a lot of time. 3 weeks is more than enough for you to make you pass this exam with a very good score. All right. So any question from here for the trial balance? I think that's the end. So we don't have any more question. Make sure you read the book once again because we completed the book today. So obviously you need to revise from the beginning till chapter number 12 once again, very quickly. And after that, the practice question I have sent it to you, that is question bank. Please practice from there, and that will help you to understand more. Practice question is very, very important. After that, obviously next week, I'm going to see you with the exam question. We'll practice some exam question from there. So yes, Fatima, we have to book for the exam, but I'll tell you how to do everything. We're going to do exam in our center, so don't have to worry about it. I'll tell you everything. So just for the time being, focus on study. You'll be fine for the exam. Don't worry about it. So I'll see you next week, and make sure everyone write it down your name for the attendance now, because otherwise you're not going to get the recorded video. It's very important. You write your full name so that the admin team knows you are in the class, and they'll give you the access for the videos. It's very, very important you do the attendance. So obviously, like as I said, next week will be our revision class, and after that we will we'll do our mock and the final exam. And of course, like during your study time, if you have any question, you can always email me. You can do exam anywhere. We have a center. If you see like you don't live in London, if you live somewhere outside of the London, there is an exam center in everywhere in the UK. So all you need to write AAT exam center on the Google. It will tell you what is your nearest exam center. You can book the exam. You can do the exam from there as well. Well, if is any issue with the date, we'll talk about the date later on. So if you think like you cannot attend the mock or the final on that day, we have a different option. We can arrange some another day, but we'll talk later on about it. So for the time being, we would say like next week we do the revision. After that, we'll talk about exam. All right. So thank you very much for joining me today. If you have any question, you can write it down for me, or otherwise I'm going to see you next week same times. And please make sure you do some study, and during the study if you have any question, email me. I'll get back to you. Thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you next week same time.